All right, one of our projects are these holiday gifts that we're going to do, and we're going to create coasters, not cutting boards. And so one of the things that I often asked by students is, can we make a cutting board? And we do have projects and students that make cutting boards, but what I've found is that coasters, it really gets at the exact same idea, right? The glue up is almost the same, the processing is almost the same. But the advantage of coasters is, first and foremost, they take a lot less lumber, right? So they're cheaper. But also I can use lumber in a coaster that I wouldn't be able to use in a cutting board. So this has redwood in it. It also has some pine and some cedar. It has some traditional hardwoods as well, like the purple heart that you see, and some maple. But it really works better for a shop class because we get at the same ideas. We personalize them with the laser engraver, and it gets at this idea of how you would create something like a cutting board, but for a fraction of the cost. And in the end, I think they look just as good. You can personalize them very easily, and they can make a lot more of them. And so students have the ability to create coasters down the road. It's an easy one for them to do, whereas again, there's a little bit more high stakes on a cutting board. So again, for a shop class solution, right, the idea of a cutting board versus a coaster is really a no-brainer. And I'd encourage you to think through that process of, if it's first time making something like this, focusing on the coaster piece is probably a much nicer way to go. So I'll show you some examples of finished product in just a second. All right, so here's some examples of coasters that we've made in the past. This is actually just redwood and pine. And you can see, again, it has a complex glue up. It has a chamfered edge. This actually has plywood and redwood that makes a nice coaster. This is kind of like the ones that you saw in there where it has some hardwoods. We laser engrave logos, or we can do handwritten messages on them, and they turn out really nice. Even just a simple coaster, right, just two pieces of wood put together, it can be really a nice coaster. So there's a lot of variety for what you can do with coasters. Again, they're easier to store. It's not as much lumber. You get all the same ideas. And students really like them because they're easy gifts that you can give. You can make, lots of sets of coasters for the same amount of board feet that you'd be able to make one cutting board from. So again, for a high school class situation, looking at coasters is another one. And then that these are sitting in, just as an aside, is for students that are interested in kind of more complex glue ups. This was a box that we created. It has like your chevron pattern, and this is just redwood fence boards and plywood that we glued up. And we have different sides with different patterns on them. So again, they get a lot of practice with really pretty cheap materials for something that's more complex. If a student wanted to do a chevron pattern in a cutting board down the road, I'd have them make something like this first. And then that would give them practice with cheap materials, and they could learn a lot from it. And still actually have a pretty nice product in the end with this, as opposed to learning on an expensive type of material, that would be cutting board quality lumber. So again, another cheap way to kind of get at the idea and the concepts without going through a lot of materials or cost.